Yo, welcome back to a brand new video here on the second channel. Today we're going to be looking at all of the Day 2 decks from the Fresno Regionals. Now, Fresno is the last big major tournament in the Scarlet and Violet meta. I still wanted to kind of look at the decks that did well, because I do think that we still have a decent bit of information from this format to kind of translate into our Paldea format, and especially with a couple of decks that did get top 8, I really think that it's good to kind of look at these decks and maybe recap and where they might go in the future with Paldea Evolved, because there are a couple decks in the top 8 here that definitely stand out from the crowd and could potentially be something to look into even in the Paldea format. I think that would be a good way to kind of send off the Scarlet and Violet meta here with this video, would be to talk about what decks could, how these decks will adapt or change going forward in Paldea Evolved, looking at the results from Fresno Regionals. If y'all are excited for the video, make sure to leave a like, and if you're new to the second channel, click that subscribe button down below. Without further ado, let's get into Day 2. So, the deck that won is Lugia. Reagan Retzloff finally won with the Lugia deck, which, I mean, yeah, Lugia basically has been Reagan's main deck for the entirety of, this season, and Lugia's just been insane. The fact that it won is no surprise. It's still just the most basic, straightforward deck in the meta, in my opinion, apart from maybe, Arctina. But yeah, no, it's good. Now, the question will be, will Lugia continue to play the Single Strike engine, or will it play the Snorlax package instead in Paldea Evolved? I think that both builds are both, good and bad in certain scenarios. I think the Snorlax build, you have a bit of an easier matchup into Lost Box, but the Tyranitar Single Strike build, you have a better time into something like Gardevoir, or at least you have a better kind of general spread of power, because you have that immediate damage boost with Single Strike Crush with Tyranitar. So we'll ultimately have to see where Single Strike Lugia goes for NEIC and the Paldea format. But yeah, Lugia winning is not a surprise to see. And we have, of course, Lost Box in second place, because Lost Box is a broken deck. It is not the Kyogre build. Caleb did not play Kyogre this time around. Getting back-to-back second place with Lost Box is pretty cool. However, this is not Kyogre. It is just a Turbo Lost Box deck with Trekking Shoes. I think Turbo Lost Box is still fine going into Paldea Evolved. It does have to worry about Iono, which is really the only thing that the deck is going to have to deal with, is how good is Iono going to be. But yeah, Turbo Lost Box is still a very strong deck, and no surprise that it still did well, because it's Lost Box, right? Just no surprise there. And then, of course, we got Mew getting third place. Mew does adapt a little bit. Obviously, with Spiritomb coming out, Mew is going to have to adapt quite a bit. We do see the double turbo Mew here doing well with the Roxanne, with the Penny, the 3-path, 1-loss city split being really powerful. And yeah, just double turbo Mew. Once again, proving that Fusion Mew is not as good as DT Mew. Though Fusion Mew might be the way going forward now that we have Spiritomb in the format. So I don't know if DT Mew is going to survive in Paldea, because if people just play Spiritomb in their deck, DT Mew is going to have a hard time against it, whereas Fusion Mew has a little bit of an easier time against Spiritomb. I think that's going to be kind of the big takeaway there. We got Guardy getting top 4 here. Cal Connor playing the Guardy deck here. With the Drapion respecting Mew, which is kind of smart. I mean, Gardevoir will probably maybe play Spiritomb. If you want to play Guardy going into the Paldea Evolved format, honestly, playing Spiritomb in the deck isn't bad, but Gardevoir is just insane in the new format. Gardevoir getting access to Reversal Energy is going to put the deck on another level of power. So this is not the last you're going to see of Gardevoir. Gardevoir is probably the BDIF for NEIC, because it just gets the biggest upgrade out of every deck. It's the deck that has the most tools and most resources, so this is not going to be the last you see of Guardy. I think Guardy just gets even better in Paldea Evolved, and I think that Reversal Energy and Iono are just going to make the deck insanely powerful. Now, the big shocker was Darkrai getting top 8. Now, Darkrai was honestly a really good meta call for this tournament. Apart from having an awkward matchup against something like Lost Box, or even something like Lugia could be a little shaky, Darkrai was honestly a decent play, because if you just hit a bunch of Gardevoir and a bunch of Mew, you're probably doing well, right? Darkrai is basically just all gas. This list here does play 4 Research, 1 Serena, 1 Clara, so just super heavy draw with Cross Switcher, Pokestop, Trekking Shoes, just a lot of draw within the deck. And the fact that it got top 8 is really impressive, because I think a lot of people would have said that Darkrai, it's cool because we've seen Darkrai get Day 2 before. In the last video, we literally just looked at a Darkrai deck that got Day 2. But now we have Darkrai all the way in top 8. Now, to be fair, the person that did pilot this deck did play against 4 or 5 Mew in Day 2 of the tournament. But even then, like, I still think Darkrai can still lose to Mew. Like, I'm not saying Mew's an auto win, but it's definitely not bad of a matchup. And especially Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir is one of the reasons why you would want to play Darkrai, is because Darkrai just farms Gardevoir. And this was a decent meta call, right? Darkrai could be good because Gardevoir just won Milwaukee. So there's more reason to play something like Darkrai because now Gardevoir is going to be more popular because Gardevoir won Milwaukee. You know, there's also Mew, which is still insanely popular, so pretty good meta call. Honestly, I can still see Turbo Darkrai being decent in the Paldea format. Gardevoir is still going to be very popular, and now that Darkrai kind of gets that good matchup with Gardevoir, we might even see Darkrai kind of get even more upgrades. I think Iono could be a really good addition to this deck. A couple Ionos could help Darkrai out quite a bit. That would even help you a bit more against Lost Box. I know that the Manaphy and the Clap Stadium are there to kind of make the Lost Box matchup a little bit more easier, but I definitely think that the addition of Iono and potentially even Squawkabilly are going to be pretty good upgrades. So I can honestly see Turbo Darkrai still working in the Paldea Evolved meta, and I'm definitely going to give it a look for sure. I probably will end up doing a video on Darkrai at some point, because I actually think Darkrai could still be a good meta call for the Paldea meta, right? Because I think it has an okay matchup into Gardevoir. Gardevoir being more popular is going to help Darkrai out quite a bit. We'll have to see how Darkrai can adapt to the popularity of Gardevoir, though. And that's going to be the big question is, can Darkrai adapt to Gardevoir's popularity with Reversal Energy? We'll have to see, though. But I do think Darkrai was an okay meta call, and it is cool to see. And I'm definitely excited to see if Darkrai can maybe continue some of this momentum going into the Paldea format, because I don't think it's bad in Paldea Evolved. I think that a couple of upgrades do give it a little bit more of a power boost, so it's cool. And then, of course, we got another Lugia deck here in top 8, once again playing at the Urshifu. And then we have the Keys. Shout out to Sawyer getting top 8 with the Arc Keys deck. A really cool deck. Again, this deck had a pretty good showing in the Milwaukee tournament, but now it actually managed to get top 8. And it's exciting to see. This deck is really cool. Basically, the most anti-meta deck right now you can play. You use Klefki. Klefki shuts off Genesect and shuts off Comfey, and then you have Arceus plus, you know, Judge Path. You have Aerodactyl, which is not only a good attacker, but it's also really good against Lugia, because you can Klefki shut off Lugia from being able to do, like, Luminion. And as long as they just don't literally have, like, the nuts, you just Aerodactyl them, and Lugia just can't win. So that's basically how this deck operates. It's a very strong deck, and it's a very annoying deck to play against. And the fact that it got top 8 is exciting to see. Now, there is questions as to whether or not this deck can survive in the Paldea format, and I still think it's okay for Paldea Evolved. I think Klefki is still a pretty good card in the Paldea meta. I think there's still reason to believe that Aerodactyl would still be a strong card against Lugia. Lugia's not going to go anywhere, so I can still see that. I can see this deck still surviving in the Paldea Evolved format. This deck definitely might have to adapt a little bit. I mean, Iono is a nice upgrade. I mean, this deck does get Iono, which is a pretty cool upgrade this deck might actually have now. So we'll have to see if the Keys can survive the Paldea format. I think that the Keys are still fine for Paldea Evolved. Maybe it's not as good as it was for the Scarlet and Violet meta, obviously. I don't think this deck is as good now anymore for the Scarlet and Violet format, or than it was for the Scarlet and Violet, but I don't think that it's going to fall off with Paldea. This could still be a legit deck to play in the Paldea meta. And then, of course, we got Libui getting top 8 with, once again, the Double Turbo Mew, which, again, Double Turbo Mew might fall off. Then we got more Lost Box here. Kyogre Lost Box with Articuno. The Paralyzed Raymond Long list here. Really good deck, in my opinion. I still think this is kind of underrated. The Articuno is still, in my opinion, very much slept on. But yeah, this deck is really powerful. And again, Articuno's good. This type of Lost Box deck with Articuno, honestly, might still be fine for Paldea Evolved. I don't think Articuno gets worse. Articuno does actually work pretty well against Guardy. Guardy doesn't have any way to counter Articuno, so I think Articuno is actually really good against Gardevoir. So that is one reason why this deck can be good against Guardy, is because Articuno is good against Guardy. The ultimate challenge with playing Articuno Lost Box is, will you be able to beat Iono, right? That's going to be the thing. But I think Articuno is still really good in Lost Box for Paldea Evolved. Then we got more Mew here, the Double Turbo build of Mew. We're going to try to glance through some of these decks because, I mean, we're not really in this format anymore. We got Grant Manley doing well, and then we got more Guardy shenanigans here with the Guardy. The belt was really interesting, and I don't know if Guardy's going to play belt anymore, because now that you have Reversal Energy, like, you don't really need Choice Belt, because you're not relying on Zacian anymore. Now that you have Shining Arcana Gardevoir as an attacker, makes it better. But you can see there's a lot of Mew here doing really well. I mean, we've already seen like 4 Mew decks. There's a lot of Mew in this set is doing well. We got Lugia teching in the Manaphy, which is a really good call. Manaphy Thornton, really good call for Milwaukee, or Hartford, Fresno, sorry. I'm getting the regionals mixed up. I apologize for Fresno, because Manaphy, really good because of Kyogre's popularity and dominance, and there's, there's a reasonable reason to play the Manaphy in the deck, because you can counter Kyogre, which was what, Kyogre was meant, to beat Lugia. So having the Manaphy for Kyogre is honestly really, really good. Pretty, good anti-Lost Box Lugia deck all around, in all honesty. We got more Mew here. Again, Double Turbo Mew just doing really well. We do have a Fusion Mew doing pretty well, too. Again, Fusion Mew definitely looks to be the way going forward. We do see the Meloetta and the Deoxys. I'm pretty sure, actually, that this was a Shuffle Squad member. Yeah, it was King Drake Flood. I'm pretty sure was playing this deck here. But yeah, no, Fusion Mew is still really good, obviously. The Manaphy, again, being a pretty good inclusion in Mew this week. And I know a few people that were playing Manaphy because it was really good against Kyogre. And the Lost City Manaphy plus Judge can be really strong against, Lost Box, right? So really cool to see the Fusion Mew do well. Definitely a really strong deck, and I am not surprised to see it, get top 16, because it's still, a good deck, right? Just because I think that its Lost Box matchup is a little bit more shakier doesn't mean that it's a bad deck. And then we actually have a Rapid Strike deck almost getting top 16. I mean, Rapid Strike is fine, right? You beat Lost Box. The nice thing is that Drapion Octillery is a really good combo versus Mew VMAX, because you can't even, as long as you draw Drapion out off of, a Roxanne or Judge, you can just go Octillery for Tower, go into Drapion, and then knock out Mew. You can just win the game in 2 attacks. The Fusion Mew matchup is the only one that's a little bit more difficult, because you have to knock out the Meloetta, and you can't Drapion Meloetta, so it's, kind of difficult. But overall, Rapid Strike doing this well is cool. Now, the question is, does Rapid Strike transfer over that well into the Paldea meta? And I want to say that it's still kind of in the middle of yeah and no. The deck actually is still, okay against Gardevoir, because you do farm a lot of their low HP Pokemon, though I think that Meowscarada could give this type of deck a run for its money. I wouldn't be surprised if this deck maybe fell off a little bit, because I think Lost Box falls off a little bit. We don't really need this, super heavy anti-meta Lost Box deck anymore. And I know that Mew's still popular, so, this Octillery Drapion Mew counter is still really good, but I'm not sure that this deck is going to be that good for Paldea, because, well, it does have an okay Guardy matchup. I think Guardy might get a little bit more tougher now that they can use the reversal energy against you. That's, the ultimate thing, but being able to, Yoga Loop Gardevoir, though, is still insane, so I wouldn't be surprised if this deck maybe held on, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see this deck fall off a little bit in the Paldea Evolved format. I don't know if it really gets any upgrades. I don't know if Iono is worth playing in the deck or not. Maybe 1 or 2. We got more Double Turbo Mew. Again, Henry Brand doing well with Guardy again. Would have been insane if he got another top 8. But yeah, Guardy doing pretty well again. Just Guardy being Guardy. And then, of course, we got more Kyogre Lost Box here. And the question is, does Kyogre survive the Paldea meta? Because Kyogre, people would argue that, oh, well, Kyogre's bad now that Iono exists. Well, I don't think so. Kyogre can always play around the Iono. So, essentially, Kyogre's way to beat Mew was always that they would play around the Roxanne by not giving up, by not taking 4 prizes, right? They would always play around the Roxanne by not activating Roxanne, right? They would always play around it by just letting you judge them. So it makes it harder for the Mew player to be able to win in time. But with this build here, with Iono, Kyogre can still play around Iono to 3. So I still think that Kyogre can still beat the decks, but it's going to be hard because you're a little bit more, you're not as you can't just, it's easier to play around Roxanne with Kyogre when you're playing against Mew than it is when you're playing against something else, right? Where you don't have to worry about Roxanne, because not every deck plays Roxanne. The only decks that play Roxanne are Gardevoir and Mew, so it's a bit more harder to do. And now that you have to play around Iono in every single deck, it gets a little bit harder to play the Kyogre, right? So I think that's going to be the main thing. I can still see Kyogre working, though. I mean, Kyogre's just an insane card, right? It's just a very powerful card that wins games. And that's how it goes. I got more Lost Box here. This one playing Aerodactyl. It's actually a deck I saw in an online tournament. I think Aerodactyl was a decent meta call for Fresno because of Lugia's popularity. And this Lost Box, it's literally Turbo Lost Box with an Aerodactyl. Really cool archetype. I don't know if the Aerodactyl is needed in the Paldea format, but it is cool to see that this type of Lost Box deck do well. Lost Box can get creative, and though the deck is kind of, in my opinion, toxic, I think that it is cool that these, really weird creative builds can pop off, and it's kind of cool to see Aerodactyl and Lost Box, which, to be fair, if you're able to set this up against Lugia, you're probably big chillin', right? Because Lost Box does struggle against Lugia sometimes, so having that, guaranteed counter is nice. We got another Rapid Strike deck here doing well, which is cool to see. We see 2 Rapid Strike decks in the top 32, which is interesting for sure, because we see more Lost Box. I think we were just looking at that, actually, or I might be wrong. And then we got Makani Train. Now, Makani didn't play the exact list of the Arc Keys deck. He actually played Arc Aerodactyl, more of a counter box deck, right? He had the Aerodactyl VSTAR, the RCS Bibarel engine, not playing the very interesting build of the list here, not opting to play any other like attackers. So it's just Arc Aerodactyl essentially, right? He's got the Evoltol. If you set up Aerodactyl against Lugia, they try to manually attach energy to attack, you can just Evoltol them into Oblivion and then they just lose. He's even got the Mawa on the deck for the trap plays. So it's a really interesting list here from Makani. Definitely cool to see Makani kind of innovate with this wacky Arceus Aerodactyl deck, but it is cool to see it do well because it's a different take on Arceus, right? Arc Aerodactyl is something that I actually thought had potential, so it is cool to see its potential maybe get reached. Then we got more Lugia, again, just Lugia being basically the one of the best decks. We got more Kyogre Lost Box here once again. We got my friend Hamza here getting 27th place with Guardy too. But yeah, Guardy just a very strong deck. Playing the Choice Bell 2 in the deck for the Arceus matchups. And then we actually see, what was Justin Bakari playing? Was he playing? He was playing Kyogre Lost Box. Okay. But we do actually see a Sableye Cramsar deck here played by Piper. Now, Sableye Cramsar, a lot of people would argue, is not as good as Kyogre. Then some people would argue that it is good like Kyogre. And it's definitely kind of in the middle between good and bad. I think that it's actually still like a perfectly fine deck. This deck maybe gets worse with Paldea Evolved because the Charizard gets a little bit harder to pull off in the Paldea format, because if you're getting like Iono constantly, it's harder to do Charizard, but I can even see this deck being fine. I don't know, like, it's easy to like say that like Turbo Lost Box or Kyogre Lost Box maybe gets worse with Paldea Evolved. It's harder to predict whether or not Sableye Cramsar gets worse with Paldea Evolved, because Iono does hurt Lost Box, but does Iono do enough damage to hurt the Charizard? Because I guess what you can do, you can bench the Charizard on the turn that you know you're going to get Iono'd on. And that can be pretty good, right? Because then you always will have the Charizard in play. And maybe that's where this deck will shine in the Paldea format. And also, super fast Sableye is also really strong too. Don't sleep on the ability to get a very quick Sableye off, right? So I guess there is reason to believe that Sableye Cramsar is still going to be a good deck in Paldea. Because again, if you bench the Charizard on the turn that you know you're getting Iono'd on, they have to boss the Charizard to deal with it, and they don't Iono you, which essentially gives you Clara, and that might just kind of be the way to play this deck going into Paldea Evolved, which honestly, it still might be fine for that format. And then we got more Guardy again with the Gallade. We see more Mew. We do see Lost Box here, Zool getting almost top 32 with Lost Box. Then we see the Arctina deck here with the Dunsparce tech. I'm not really sure the Dunsparce is for. I know it's good against Aerodactyl, which I guess it would have helped in, but I'm not sure what other matchup you need the Dunsparce in, per se. I guess it's nice into Rapid Strike, but like they just knock out your Dunsparce anyways. I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, Arctina, just, again, good deck. Judge Path, really good combo. Arctina honestly gets better with Paldea Evolved because it doesn't really get worse, per se. Like, I think its Guardian matchup is still fine because you just have Judge Path. Now you have Iono Path on top of that, so I think Arctina will now start playing Iono and Judge instead of Judge and Research, right? I think that's going to be the new staple for Arctina going forward, is instead of playing Iono, or instead of playing Research, now it's going to go Iono Judge. And that's a very deadly combo. So I can see Arctina getting better in the new format, or at least staying the same. And yeah, more Lugia, just doing well. We got quite a few Arctinas here in succession. This one is interesting. It actually plays a Miltank. I'm not sure what matchup the Miltank's for, because like it doesn't do anything in the mirror match because they can shred you. I guess no, not even Lugia. I was thinking Lugia. No, Lugia has a myriad of attackers. I actually don't know what matchup Miltank is good in. Like, I guess Gudra. That's a little like I'm thinking. But I am honestly just baffled. I don't know what matchup Miltank is good for. Am I missing something, or like what matchup is Miltank? I guess like the keys maybe. I guess like Darkrai. I don't even know. That's weird. I actually don't know what the Miltank's for. That's a really weird tech card. This one does play the Skwovet and the Manaphy. Again, Manaphy being a pretty good tip. Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Why does it say there's fighting energy in the deck? I am so confused right now. Is that a glitch? That must be a glitch on Limitless, because it says there's fighting energy in the deck. That's obviously not... That's supposed to be psychic energy, so I'm not sure what's up with that. I think they just imported that wrong. That tripped me out for a sec. I was like, there's no Aerodactyl in the deck. So that was weird. Yeah, we see more Guardy here. Again, Guardy just being Guardy. Another Rapid Strike. Actually, a fair amount of Rapid Strike in day 2, which is interesting. A lot more Rapid Strike than I remember seeing in Milwaukee and Hartford in day 2. But yeah, no, Rapid Strike again, still a decent deck. And I don't know, maybe the ability to do the Octillery Drapion loop was just a really good meta call for Fresno. And maybe that's why it did so well. Because there's a lot of Mew, right? There's a lot of Mew. We see a Miraidon Flaffy deck doing well here. Yeah, Miraidon Flaffy, perfectly fine deck. Will this deck get better, though, in the Paldea meta? So I think Miraidon's up in the air. I'm definitely going to test it, but I think Bravery Charm is the big upgrade Miraidon got, because Bravery Charm does give Miraidon more HP. The downside is that now Miraidon has to worry about Iono, which can be a bit of a hurt for Miraidon. Like, you can get, like, Iono to 4 cards after taking a turn 1 knockout, and that can be pretty devastating. So I'm not sure that Miraidon gets better or worse. It might get slightly worse with Paldea, but it's still like a perfectly fine deck in my opinion in the format. I think Bravery Charm is a nice upgrade, but Iono is kind of, I think, the big thing that kind of sucks for Miraidon. We do see a Lugia deck, or Goodra deck, sorry, doing well with the Articuno. Goodra's a weird call because, again, I think that it has a pretty bad time into most decks, but it is cool to see Goodra do well because Goodra is still just a strong card, and Goodra can still win games because people sometimes either don't know how to play against it or they can't do much against it at all. We do see an Arcdura Umbreon here, so the first one. So a bit of a fall off for the deck. Didn't really have as good of a showing as it did in Fresno and Milwaukee. I mean, Hartford and Milwaukee. I apologize. I'm getting these regionals mixed up. Not as good a performance as it did in Milwaukee and Hartford, but cool to see nonetheless. We do see the Drapion being included in the deck here, which I think is fine. I mean, Drapion Umbreon is a pretty good combo against Mew. Instead of setting up 2 Umbreons, you can just go like Drapion Umbreon and be like, well, what's Mew going to do at that point, right? So really cool to see Arcdura do well. I always root for that deck. More Arctina stuff here. We got another Keys deck, it looks like. Yeah, we got the Keys. Once again, Keys to the Kitchen, just being a strong deck. This playing Gift Energy. Very interesting inclusion. I don't hate it because it lets you... I guess it's okay. Like, it gets you out of Brick's hands. Like, you can put on, like, Clefgear, Arceus. That's an interesting card. Gift Energy and Arceus is definitely interesting. We do see a Miraidon deck. This is actually the Turbo Miraidon deck, as I like to call it, the Jose Marzan Turbo deck from Milwaukee. This is a really sweet list. And I actually think this deck is actually really cool going into the next format, Paldea Evolved, because I think that the ability to play Turbo Miraidon is kind of clever, right? It's a really clever strategy, and it's cool to see this deck do well and get day 2, because it's a really cool take on Miraidon. So we've seen 2 different Miraidon decks in day 2, which is nice. Let's see. This one, we see Lost Box with a Galarian Zapdos V, which can catch a lot of people off guard because nobody really expects that. More Sableye Cramsard here. This one, oh, I lied. This is not Sableye Cramsard. This is Sableye Regidrago Delphox Charizard. So this is a different take on the Mirage Gate engine. Now, the downside of this engine, because this was something that like Israel Sosa played with like Leafeon, the downside of this is that you don't get to play Greninja, right? You have to play the Charizard. But the cool upgrade with this idea is that you can Mirage Gate 2 Charizard. So you kind of turn your Charizard into a mini Dragonite, because instead of using Dragonite, you actually can just Mirage Gate Charizard instead. So you can go like early Cram Snipe, or, you know, even early, Sableye maybe if you're lucky. And then you get to like Charizard with you can go like Mirage Gate, 2 energy to Charizard, attached to Charizard. That is really cool. The fact this deck got day 2 is exciting to see. The Delphox is really smart too, because you knock out the Lost Box's mana fee, and if they know you're not playing Greninja, you can just drop a Delphox on them out of nowhere, and it can be pretty insane. Because Delphox is literally Amazing Rare Raikou, so that's kind of another like 2 prize, take 2 prizes attacker. Probably a game finisher more than anything else. I would imagine the Delphox is in here to finish the game. But yeah, really cool to see this list. That's an interesting list. And the Regidrago too. I mean, it can knock out Vs in 1 hit, and you can set up damage with Sableye too, which is kind of cool. So a lot of, like, the thing I like about this is like there's a lot of heavy hitters in the deck with the Drago and the Charizard. We see more Arcdura here doing well. This one does not play Drapion, but still, like, again, if you can set up double Umbreon, you're probably fine into Mew. And we do see another Arc deck here. Another Arc Aerodactyl. This was an interesting list. Very similar to Makani's list. Doesn't play the Mawile, but does play a Radiant Serena instead, and a Clap Stadium. So a bit of a different, take on the list. Really cool idea, though. The Radiant Serena is kind of interesting. I guess, like, Radiant Serena helps you even more against Lost Box, so it makes Lost Box even harder to win when you constantly get to heal with Serena, which is, I guess, kind of smart, too. So it's kind of cool, I guess. What else? We got an Arceus Duraludon, a pure Arcdura deck, which, I mean, sure, it doesn't play the Vulpix or the Umbreon, but it just cut those for, like, just more supporters, I guess, right? Crystal Cave is kind of smart against Lost Box, though. But yeah, no. Arctur is interesting. This is a very greedy list. Actually, very greedy. 2 RCSVs, 3 Ultra Balls. So very greedy list. Not playing that many Arceus or Ultra Balls is kind of greedy, but if greed pays off, you're probably cooking. So yeah, really interesting. A straightforward Arceus Duraludon deck with double Drapion. I mean, it works. This person got day 2 with it. Not terrible. And with all the Mew, it wasn't even that bad call to play double Drapion anyways. That's interesting. We see a Guardy Mewtwo also got day 2. This is a deck that kind of fell off, but we get to see it get day 2 here. It is playing the Clef Keys for like the slow down the Lost Box matchup, so that's pretty cool to see. Yeah, Guardy Mewtwo, we'll see where it goes in the Paldea format. We see more Fusion Mew doing well. Is there anything else? We do see one more Arceus Duraludon Umbreon deck here. This one looks like another straightforward build. Plain only. Okay, I saw the I didn't see the research. I was like, I don't see research in the deck. We do see the I was like, oh, is it only playing Chorus and Judge for draw? But no, it's got the 2 research. I was blind. But yeah, Arcdura, and then yeah, it looks like everything else was just kind of the same. I think the biggest rogue takeaway obviously was Darkrai getting top 8, and I don't know if Darkrai will, get top 8 ever again. It is cool to see, but I'm interested where Darkrai goes going forward, because I think there is a potential for Darkrai to be good in Paldea Evolved. And honestly, we kind of recapped, I think, a lot of these decks and kind of talked about whether or not they will get an upgrade or get worse or better going into the Paldea meta. But that'll be for me here on the second channel. Hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I hope maybe y'all got some cool information and ideas heading into the Paldea Evolved format. And if anyone's going to NEIC, hopefully maybe this video kind of sparks some spice ideas in your mind. Because again, I think there could be a lot of interesting things going forward with a lot of these decks, right? Like Lugia kind of playing the Snorlax, taking away the single strike package. Darkrai maybe still being okay for Paldea Evolved because it still is fine into Gardevoir, which is now maybe the BDIF, right? And that's the big thing, is like now Gardevoir could potentially be the BDIF for this format. So we'll really have to see where all this goes. But I'm excited for the Paldea meta. The Scarlet Violet meta was fine. I enjoyed it a bit. I think that it ended up being a little mid overall, but I did enjoy the Scarlet Violet meta. I think looking back, it wasn't that bad. And it was exciting to have a new format. And it's going to be exciting to see where the format goes going forward with the Paldea Evolved format and how decks go up and down on the ranking. I'll probably be doing more Paldea Evolved format meta videos eventually. I do have plans to probably do a tier list video and more like NEIC content getting closer as we lead up to NEIC, which is, I mean, it's not that far away. It's the 14th of June right now. So we still have, a couple weeks away until we really got to get prepared. So yeah, we'll see. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. And let me know what you think of the top 8 decks down below and all the decks that got day 2. A lot of Rapid Strike in day 2. And Darkrai getting top 8 was exciting to see. So I'm excited going forward with Paldea. And I will catch you all in another video. Bye-bye.